Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to untangle a really fascinating, highly charged panel debate that recently aired on Fox News. We're looking at a conversation that started with just a single late night television joke, but man, it rapidly evolved into this profound society wide debate about the limits of free speech, the rising temperature of our political rhetoric, and the genuine fears surrounding political violence. Now, my goal today absolutely isn't to tell you who's right or who's wrong. Instead, we're going to map out the arguments exactly as they happened so we can clearly understand the anatomy of modern political discourse. To make sense of all this, we've broken the debate down into 5 thematic ripples. First, the late-night controversy itself. Then, debating the apology, free speech, and hypocrisy, the escalation of rhetoric, and finally, searching for common ground. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. The late-night controversy, the catalyst of the debate.
So the entire panel debate really hinges on one inciting incident. A joke late-night host Jimmy Kimmel made during a monologue referring to Melania Trump as an expectant widow. Now, this sparked immediate outrage, mostly because it was delivered just a couple of days after a third assassination attempt on Donald Trump. Kimmel, though, defended his words. He insisted he meant absolutely no harm, characterizing the comment as just a light roast focused entirely on the age difference between the former president and the former first lady. He flatly rejected any assertion that it was a call to assassination or violence. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the precise nature of Melania Trump's written response to a newspaper. She didn't just say she was personally offended, She actually framed this as an issue of community standards and corporate accountability. She stated that violent rhetoric shouldn't be tolerated against any leaders, completely regardless of party affiliation. And critically, she targeted Kimmel's employer, saying ABC should draw the line. This literally elevates the issue from a bad joke to a question of network responsibility, which really sets the stage for the panel's intense reaction. Section 2. Debating the apology. Grace versus ratings. The panel immediately zeroed in on Kimmel's refusal to just simply say, "I'm sorry." And we see 2 really competing theories here. On one side, you have panelist Emily arguing from a moral baseline. She stated that grace is free, meaning an apology costs absolutely nothing. She argued it would have shown elegance and decorum for Kimmel to simply say, "Look, I'm sorry you went through an assassination attempt." It's a view of public life rooted in basic human empathy. But on the flip side, panelist Harris offered a highly cynical economic perspective. She analyzed the late-night television ratings and argued that for Kimmel, grace is absolutely not free. According to Harris, controversy drives clicks. She posited that Kimmel actually gains audience share by doubling down and appealing to a more radical base, making an apology, well, just bad for business. And the panel's concern over the joke's intent wasn't just theoretical. Harris cited Paul Morrow, a former NYPD detective and attorney who analyzed the specific phrasing Kimmel used. Morrow noted that the phrasing, using the word widow, specifically evokes death and assassination. By bringing in a law enforcement perspective, the panel underscored exactly why they felt the joke crossed a line from poor taste into genuinely dangerous territory, especially given the recent threats against the former president.
Moving on to Section 3. Free speech and hypocrisy, the legal bounds.
As the panel debated whether Kimmel's network should actually face FCC investigations, panelist Marie stepped in to clarify a really critical legal distinction. Under the First Amendment, the legal line for unprotected speech is drawn at direct, actionable threats or illegality, not at whether a comment is deeply offensive, tasteless, or even cruel. While panelist Emily maintained that an assassination joke about a former president is unacceptable, Marie pointed out that legally speaking, being a jerk or making an offensive joke doesn't inherently violate the First Amendment or warrant government intervention. Building right on that legal foundation, Marie introduced a pretty strong counter-argument regarding political hypocrisy. She argued that it boggles the mind to see self-proclaimed free speech absolutists within the Republican Party, people who normally argue that you should be able to say whatever you want publicly, suddenly demanding FCC investigations and calling for a host to be fired simply because they are the ones offended by the speech. It's a really fascinating look at how the panel debated the shifting, often partisan boundaries of who actually gets to claim free speech protections. Section 4. The escalation of rhetoric, a society-wide issue. And this brilliantly illustrates the next point. The panel pulled the camera way back, connecting this specific controversy to a terrifying broader trend of political violence. They started rattling off grim, real-world examples affecting both the left and the right.
They cited the assassination attempts on Donald Trump, the brutal hammer attack on Nancy Pelosi's husband, Paul Pelosi, the tragic murder of Democratic legislators in Minnesota in their own home, and the violent rhetoric directed at conservative commentator Charlie Kirk. The overarching point was crystal clear. The rhetorical temperature in this country has real-world casualties, and absolutely neither side is immune to the fallout. Panelist Charles brought a particularly chilling observation to this segment. He warned that the lines between political entertainment and real-world danger are really blurring. He pointed out that modern political manifestos written by violent actors are actually sounding more and more like the left-wing and right-wing soundbites you hear on late-night talk shows or in the halls of Congress. He argued that throwing this kind of rhetorical ammunition out into the public sphere is incredibly dangerous because, well, you just never know when it's going to fall into the hands of the wrong people. So, facing this harsh reality, the narrative of the panel completely shifted. They moved away from the specific grievances of the Kimmel joke and toward a much bigger, far more difficult question. Where does the discourse go from here? How do we actually fix this?
Which brings us to Section 5, Searching for Common Ground, a plea for de-escalation.
You see, despite all the heated partisan disagreements earlier in the show, the panel arrived at a moment of shared, palpable exhaustion. Panelist Marie summed it up bluntly. She said, "I hate all of it. I want all of it to stop, and I want to stop saying this is a left problem or a right problem." And that sentiment, it was echoed all around the table. Even as they debated who was currently facing more immediate danger, there was this collective plea to return to a time when society could just step back, find some low-hanging fruit, and agree on basic stability and decorum. They recognize that continuing to weaponize tragedies against political opponents is, at the end of the day, a zero-sum game.
Which leaves us with the ultimate takeaway from this explainer. In an era of escalating partisan rhetoric, how can society step back and find common ground before careless words turn into irreversible violence? It's a profound question that goes way beyond a late-night television joke, demanding real reflection from media figures, politicians, and honestly, everyday citizens alike. Thank you so much for joining me to deconstruct this vital conversation. I highly encourage you to reflect on how you consume and participate in political discourse today. Catch you on the next explainer.